Thank you for joining us on KREM 2 Plus. I'm Tim Pham. This is your KREM 2 News Recap, where we take a closer look at some of the biggest stories in the inland Northwest this past week.
City and county leaders say rising crime and dropping temperatures have made clearing Camp Hope an urgent priority. They believe it can be done by November 15th.
We are going to solve this issue not in a year, not in 8 months, but in a very short order, within 3 to 4 weeks.
Today, Spokane County activated an emergency operations center to bring resources and agencies under one roof. The next step is turning the Trent shelter into a navigation center, where people will be connected to services and housing options.
I'm a firm believer that people shouldn't be sleeping outside. The sheriff's a firm believer that people shouldn't be sleeping outside. But how we get there is what matters.
Julie Garcia of Jules Helping Hand says that outreach work is already being done at the camp, and so far,
we've already moved 349 people off this lot into humane solutions, not just a bus ticket to some city somewhere.
She says it'll take more time than a few weeks to get the remaining 442 campers into shelters and housing.
They want a timeline. I think the first 200-ish folks are going to be before the end of the year. I can't guarantee that, but that's a better timeline than saying, yeah, by November 15th.
Mayor Woodward says there will be enough space at shelters for everyone at the camp, but Garcia remains skeptical.
4 weeks from now, that Trent shelter, no matter who runs it, it's going to be full because we have hundreds of people downtown that we're forgetting about when we're talking about homeless services.
Today, Spokane County officially declaring an emergency, not just for the people living at the camp, but the surrounding neighbors and businesses. The Spokane Police Department says violent crime is up 114% within a quarter-mile radius of the camp. Property crime has shot up 80%.
After months of back and forth letters, today we finally spoke with the Department of Commerce and the Department of Transportation about their plans to clean up this homeless camp on WSDOT property. Now, their meeting here today comes just one day after Spokane County activated an emergency operations center to start its own efforts of cleaning up this camp. Representatives with WSDOT and the Department of Commerce gathered at the homeless camp near I-90 today. They wanted to showcase the progress they say is already at work here, including fencing around the camp, security, and ID badges for those staying there.
What that does is it allows us to know who originally was there, so it's never going to get any bigger.
Mike Gribner is WSDOT's regional administrator for the Eastern region. He says the county's plans to clean up the camp is redundant. Yesterday, Spokane County activated an emergency operations center to start its own cleanup efforts. And now the city of Spokane is turning the Trent shelter into an indoor navigation center. This is where regional resources will connect people to services that will meet their individual housing needs. But WSDOT says this already exists at the camp, but it's outside.
Everything that they're trying to create in the EOC is already being done here. And so what would be DOT's interest in stopping what we're doing and joining them?
City and county leaders expect to completely clear out the homeless camp by November 15th. The state does not have a deadline. Ted Kelleher with the Department of Commerce says that's because it hinges on housing availability.
We're pulling out all the stops, but it's going to take the time it takes to get that housing lined up. Otherwise, it's just going to have people scattered around the community, and that's not what the legislature chartered us to do.
Spokane County leaders have said they welcome the state to the table so they can handle these cleanup efforts together. And today, WSDOT said the same thing about the county. So when I asked the state what needs to happen for this to take place, WSDOT says the county needs to drop the lawsuit against the state because it won't have relationship-based conversations under the threat of the lawsuit.
Today, we heard from East Central business owners, homeowners, neighborhood council representatives, and county officials. Each had different stories to tell about living and working near the homeless encampment off of I-90 in Freya, but all shared one common hope, that the growing homeless encampment in their neighborhood would be gone sooner rather than later. People in the East Central neighborhood say the last year of having a homeless encampment in their backyards has been allowed for more than long enough.
The continued existence of Camp Hope has numerous, enormous deleterious effects on the more than 20,000 citizens that reside in the East Central neighborhood.
In a press conference Wednesday, those affected in the neighborhood were able to share their stories and call for action.
Camp Hope, it needs to go.
Businesses say the camp's negative effects are spilling into all of East Central. Just a walk to the other side of I-90, manager of Fred Meyer, Jesse Smith, says the illegal activity happening on his property has taken a toll on business.
We deal with drug transactions being done in our parking lot on a daily basis. This is being done in plain sight with no regard to who's around. Customers and associates have been assaulted inside and outside of our store on numerous occasions.
People who have lived in the neighborhood for decades say East Central is not what it was when they first moved in.
Camp Hope has really devalued our properties in our area. It's not safe for anybody to be out in the neighborhood anymore.
And believe a camp like this wouldn't be allowed in other Spokane neighborhoods.
If we don't do something about it, I promise you, it will be right in your neighborhood.
Sheriff Ozzie Knezevich also took to the mic to share his support in removing the camp.
This isn't hope. This is hopelessness.
Knezevich says if the Washington State Department of Transportation and Department of Commerce are able to come to the table, he believes the camp could be gone in 4 weeks.
I have no doubt. 4 weeks, this is done.
And while East Central agencies say now is the time to break down the camp, most express sympathy for the people living there.
We are all a compassionate community, but at some point, compassion becomes enabling. And I think we've reached that point.
The East Spokane Business Association says it hopes to see action taken before the Thanksgiving holiday. Executive Director of Jules Helping Hands, Julie Garcia, says her organization has opened a hotline for East Central businesses experiencing crime or disturbances they believe are linked back to the people experiencing homelessness in the area. At today's press conference, the president of the East Spokane Business Association says he was unaware this was an available resource. So today I called the hotline and it is active, although representatives tell me as of today they have not received any reports.
Less than 2 months after being awarded a multi-million-dollar contract with the city, the Guardians Foundation is out.
There are clear discrepancies in accounting practices.
City Administrator Johnny Perkins told council members several irregularities were found in payroll and expense reports the Guardians submitted, asking the city for reimbursement. Those were then put under the microscope several weeks ago after the city learned a former Guardians employee may have embezzled $118,000 over the course of several years.
There are clear violations of the current contract. Therefore, a change needs to be made right now.
Councilman Zach Sapone pressed Perkins, asking why these discrepancies weren't flagged earlier. He also questioned if the city's process of vetting nonprofits is as effective as it needs to be.
We're taking a hard look at all of our protocols, all of our reviews.
By declaring an emergency today, council members were able to bypass the bidding process and ensure that service at both shelters is uninterrupted.
The last RFP cycle, the Salvation Army was the second applicant, of two, along with the Guardians.
The Salvation Army will take over the same contract Guardians signed with the city. That contract was originally $6.5 million. Major Ken Perrine thanked council members and said the Salvation Army's goal remains the same, to help people move forward no matter what they're struggling with.
It is our intention to take over the track and cannon contracts, as is the way they are right now. We do want to spend a little bit of time to look at how they were doing things and if that fits within the Salvation Army methods.
And the Salvation Army says they'll offer jobs to staff already at the shelter working under the Guardians. KREM 2 reached out to Guardian CEO Mike Shaw yesterday and again today for comment. We have not heard back.
It was a little like a political prize fight here on the campus of Gonzaga University. The challenger, Tiffany Smiley, came out swinging, but the incumbent, U.S. Senator Patty Murray, responded with political jabs throughout the night.
We just heard a whole slew of things that I'd love to take time to rebut.
Throughout the hour-long debate, each candidate got in their digs.
You know, Senator Murray, you're not the mom in tennis shoes anymore. It's been 30 years. You've become a career politician.
I feel like I'm listening to Mitch McConnell on the Senate floor, so let me take a breath.
I took on Washington, D.C., Patty, and I won. You've never taken on Washington, D.C. You are Washington, D.C.
How much can I correct in 30 seconds? So first of all,
the homeless, how to best care for salmon, and a dozen other topics were all covered at the Spokane Showdown, along with issues that could determine the midterms, like abortion. Would Tiffany Smiley, a pro-life candidate, vote to ban abortions nationwide?
I've been clear from the very beginning, I oppose a federal abortion ban. That's long before the unprecedented leak from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's decision gave the power to the people, and that's where I believe it belongs. I respect the will of the voters here in Washington State.
I hear my opponent over there saying, I'm 100% pro-life, don't worry. I gotta tell you, I was in the Senate. I saw Supreme Court nominees come in front of us and say to us, I'm pro-life, don't worry, and look what happened.
The January 6th riots came up too. Senator Murray said Smiley's questioning of the 2020 election sows mistrust for our democracy.
My husband lost his eyesight fighting for our country. He's here in this debate listening to us. He lost his eyesight fighting for democracy, and our family lives with that sacrifice every single day. It's certainly why I'm in this fight as well. And so I want to ask, do you believe that me and my family are a threat to democracy, Senator Murray? Because tell everyone here today.
No one questions her belief in our democracy or her husband's fight for our country, ever. But do not conflate that with misconstruing about the intent of insurrectionists who were using their brute force to overtake the peaceful transfer of power.
Smiley blamed Murray for rising gas prices and crime, saying it's time for a change. Murray says there's more work to be done.
I feel good. It was an opportunity to share the contrast and the difference between the two candidates. I wish it was before ballots dropped, but I think my plan is clear. I have an agenda for recovery and reform. We need to turn crisis into hope for all of Washington.
Senator Murray declined our request for a post-debate interview. In an emailed statement, her campaign says that Senator Murray won the debate, making it clear to voters that she is the strongest, most effective voice. We only showed you a couple of minutes of the debate. If you would like to watch the entire 60-minute event, you can text the word debate to 509-448-2000 and we'll send you that link.
Well, tracking your ballot online for Washington's general election is really simple. All you need is your first and last name and your birth date. Now, the state's online tool is just one more reason to vote early. It's voting season. And this time of year is like the Super Bowl for the county elections office.
It is very, very busy.
That's why Spokane County Auditor Vicki Dalton has her team in position to take on any trick plays. And with nearly 400,000 ballots mailed out to the county, something is always bound to come up.
We have lots of people coming in, correcting their addresses, sometimes picking up replacements. We are hearing from people who are not getting their ballots, and that does happen.
Meantime, there's a way that voters can make sure their ballot doesn't get fumbled.
Yeah, some only have 4 in them.
The votewa.gov website allows you to track your ballot online. It takes 3 to 5 business days after it's submitted to get into the system. Once you enter your information, it takes you to a new page where you can track the status of your ballot. This includes when the ballot was sent, received, accepted to be tabulated, or challenged if there's a signature issue.
So that status should be current within 24 hours of the last step that occurred.
So far this election cycle, Dalton says there have been no reports of voter intimidation at the drop boxes. But if a voter believes they have, or even blocked from a drop box, they're encouraged to call Crime Check to report the incident.
It is very serious. We are hoping that our residents and voters in Washington State are civil and respectful of each other.
And if they're not, the elections office has a system in place to ensure it's a fair game. Now, you can also use the VoteWa website to view the voter's guide, generate a replacement ballot if you lost the original, and locate the ballot drop box nearest to you.
The Spokane Police Department announced that they're making changes to how they respond to 911 calls starting this Monday. People may no longer get a fast response from police or fire, depending on how serious their emergency is. Starting on October 31st, Shrek will still answer 911 calls, but only dispatch police and fire in urgent matters that impact people's safety. If a crime is in progress or someone is having a medical emergency, first responders will deploy. For calls that are not as urgent, the Shrek dispatcher will stay on the line with the caller and forward their information to the correct department to check on later.
For the emergency calls where it's in progress and there is an imminent threat, there should be no change to the way that those calls are processed. Where the public may notice a difference is going to be in the lower acuity calls. So perhaps a suspect has left, something did happen.
Police hope this change allows them to prioritize high-demand situations. SPD says it is navigating staffing shortages, and when the vaccine mandate is lifted on Monday, 5 unvaccinated firefighters who are working as dispatchers can now go back out on the streets, which means Shrek will take on additional work.
We are not making this change because we were unhappy with the way things were, but because of the staffing constraints that both organizations, actually the city and county organizations collectively have, this is the realignment of duties.
With the change, the Spokane Police Department says that people with non-urgent calls will have to be on hold for 2 to 3 minutes. This varies based on the call volume. Shrek says that they sometimes receive up to 80 911 calls an hour, and police and fire dispatchers don't have the capacity to field all the calls. Shrek encourages people to use a crime check number for crimes that aren't an emergency at 509-456-2233. Shrek is at 75% staffed for their operations and are looking to hire 20 to 25 people at the agency. If you are interested, you can visit their website at serc911.com.
For the first time, we're getting an inside look at the moments that led to Spokane police shooting and killing 23-year-old Peterson Camo. 2 SPD officers claim Camo was holding a knife to his 2-year-old nephew. As a warning, this video shows moments leading up to a traumatizing event. Faces are covered to protect the identities of those involved. Body camera footage from Officer Corrigan Mohandro shows there was just 5 minutes between the moment he left his car to when he shot at Camo. Officer Mohandro was the first to claim Camo was holding a knife to a young child.
I'm gonna take it. He's got a knife to the baby.
With this knowledge, responding officers moved in and attempted to de-escalate the situation from the bottom of the stairwell.
We want to help you, man. Just put the kid down. Put the kid down and come talk to us, my man.
Camo and the baby were upstairs, where Camo claimed he poured kerosene on the carpet. Officers say they couldn't tell exactly what they were up against, with a wall in between them and Camo.
I don't know what's on the other side of that wall.
SPD Captain Tom Hendren explains what officers could be thinking in moments like these.
You start to evaluate, how long do we wait? Do we sit here? We can't see what he's doing behind the corner, but there's a risk associated with us pressing up that stairwell too that you have to evaluate. So it's an evaluation on, they make a decision based on when they think they need to act to protect that life.
De-escalation efforts lasted 3 minutes before Corporal Brandon Lynch made the decision. He explained that decision in a statement read by Captain Hendren today.
Quote, I was out of time and any hesitation or delay whatsoever would undoubtedly result in a knife being stuck in the side of the child's head. The knife was closing in on the child's head while still on the move. I pointed my rifle near the male, briefly oriented my red dot sight to make sure that the child was not in it, and pressed the trigger.
The first round didn't hit Camo or the baby. Officer Mohandro and Corporal Lynch each fired an additional round. That's when Camo drops to the ground. Officers say they began first aid procedures. Camo later died from his injuries. The child was unharmed, and a knife and camp fuel were taken into evidence. The Spokane County prosecutor is still investigating the shooting. Last month, the Camo family filed a tort claim against the city of Spokane, asking for up to $23 million in damages. The family's attorney says they want justice for Camo, their family, and to bring awareness to acts of police violence. KREM 2 reached out to the Camo family's attorney for possible comment with the release of this body camera footage. The attorney says the family is not prepared to comment at this time, but this could change after further investigation.
It all unfolded last Thursday night when police were called to a home in Keller on reports of an active shooter. When they arrived at the home, they found 2 people dead inside. Court documents show a different tribal officer responding to the scene spotted a car matching the suspect description. He turned around and eventually stopped the car. That's when 2 females got out and sat on the ground. Moments later, court documents show the officer noticed what looked to be the barrel of a gun sticking out of the car. And that's when the suspect fired a single round toward the officer before the suspect sped off. When the officer caught up to the car a second time, it was pulled off on the side of the road, and the suspect fired another shot toward the officer. This time, the round went through the officer's windshield and hit him in the forearm. The suspect took off again, and despite his injuries, the officer began pursuing the car again. When he caught up to the car a third time, he kept his distance. The suspect was again pulled off on the side of the road when he fired yet another round at the officer, this time missing him. And this time, the suspect got away. But court documents showed the following day, police were called to a home in Nespelem where a homeowner was holding 2 of the 3 suspects at gunpoint. They were arrested. All 3 suspects connected to the incident have now been arrested. And the officer who was shot is expected to be okay.
Tell me how you're doing.
I'm doing good. Just taking it a day at a time. Just trying to kind of be with the new normal.
You can't blame Trooper Dean Atkinson for being a little camera shy. His arm is hidden.
I lost part of my left ring and middle finger.
And he doesn't want to show the side of his face where he got shot.
It's been really overwhelming the last month.
It was September 22nd. Atkinson was parked in his marked state patrol car on a Walla Walla street when a man walked up and started firing.
Is the injury?
Atkinson, after being shot in the hand and face, started driving himself to the hospital a mile away.
I passed a perfectly good fire station, and they're really good at what they do. But right when I was about passing the fire station, I realized I was a little more injured than I thought I was, so I knew the hospital was probably the best chance.
The man accused of the shooting, Brandon O'Neill, is set to go on trial on attempted murder charges in November. The day of the shooting, police evicted O'Neill from his Walla Walla apartment, where police say he had made threats to execute any cops who evicted him. Atkinson had nothing to do with the eviction. Today, instead of being angry, he's focused on his recovery.
I feel better as each day goes on. Like, I feel like I can do a little more. Throw 3. There you go.
We first met Atkinson when he was a cadet at the State Patrol's Academy in 2017.
It's hard at this point. It's hard to stay into it, I guess, mentally.
He says that training kicked in following the shooting.
Our motto during the time was, I will not quit, I will not die, I will survive. That we had to say it a lot.
Serving his community was nothing new to Atkinson, who followed his father into the Washington National Guard right after high school to help others.
That's more just like helping, and yeah, when people are in need, it's always enjoyable knowing that you're contributing to make their life a little better.
With plans to get married next summer, despite what happened, Atkinson wants to go back to patrolling the state's highways.
I don't want to rush it or anything like that. If my hand's not ready to go back to work, I'm not going to push it, but it'll be more of a when I go back to work, not an if.
I think a lot of people would say he had a close call. He almost died. He got shot in the face. Why would he want to go back to that line of work?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of family, I know my fiance probably thinks that. I mean, really, a lot of it is I don't have many other skills. I know how to be a law enforcement, and I want to do well in the bank. I'm not good at math.
People have been living here at this homeless encampment on North Railroad Street for over a year. Now, the city of Colville is moving them to a new location. This new site by Lewis Paris Road has 25 spots and has been in the works for the last 3 months. Barbara Barbie has been homeless for the past 3 years. And like 30 other people, she found an empty field to park her trailer in just last winter.
It's not someplace that none of us want to be here.
Barbara thought her life couldn't get any worse when only a couple of days ago, she got a notice that she would be forced to leave the field she lives on.
Them only giving us 2 days notice that we're got to leave, or we're going to be arrested and our stuff impounded, and then we lose everything we own, because who's got the money to get it out, you know? Nobody.
The city told Barbara that they can now cite people for illegal camping because they have a place where homeless people can stay. Back in July, Stevens County awarded Colville $125,000 to address the homeless situation. The city used the money to purchase an empty lot and to clean and put a fence around it.
I think they're rude, inconsiderate. They are self-centered. They are impatient.
The mayor of Colville says the new location is meant to give people a better living situation. He also wants to find service providers to help with employment and living options.
This is inhumane, as you can see right here. It's not a good spot for them to live, and it doesn't do anything for the people who are already living here. Essentially an unregulated settlement.
The new location is meant to give people a safe space to stay with clean water and porta potties. Michael Bales was one of the first people to move to the new location.
It's a spot where cops can't mess with me. I can keep to myself, and I'll share no problems. I'm homeless, so it's better than nothing.
The mayor says the new location is not meant to be permanent. One of the rules says that people can only stay at the location for 3 weeks and must vacate their lot space for a minimum of 5 days before coming back. The mayor wants to encourage people to move into this new space. He also hopes that this will limit the amount of people on the streets.
On June 2nd of this year, police and paramedics raced to Post Falls High School. They found a student in the school's weight room unconscious and barely breathing, showing signs of an opioid overdose. That student was revived after 2 doses of Narcan, and police determined the pills came from another student, 17-year-old Randy Martin, who was found to be in possession of suspected fentanyl pills, which he brought to school. KREM 2 spoke to the Post Falls superintendent last June.
We have never had a situation like this happen in the school. And I was the high school principal for 10 years before I came to the central office, so it's very, very scary.
The 17-year-old was arrested and later convicted of delivery of a controlled substance on school grounds. It's a felony, and in Idaho carries a maximum sentence of life in prison. District Judge John Mitchell sentenced the teen to 10 years in prison, but also retained jurisdiction, which means that Martin could spend up to 1 year in a prison-based treatment program before returning to court, where a judge will decide if he should be placed on probation or serve the remainder of his sentence. And again, that teen who overdosed survived. The Kootenai County Prosecutor's Office says it has seen a rise in fentanyl-related cases over the last year.
The federal government's plan for student debt relief includes a special waiver for public service employees, and it comes with some unique rules. Lynn reached out to ask, can you get forgiveness even if you're not currently working for a qualifying employer? Those qualified employers include government organizations, nonprofits, and AmeriCorps and Peace Corps volunteers. So let's verify if you need to be employed by one to qualify for the waiver. Our sources are the U.S. Department of Education and MOHELA, which is an official servicer of federal student aid. MOHELA reports on October 6th, the Department of Education announced temporary rule changes. It allows borrowers to receive credit for past payments that normally wouldn't qualify for loan forgiveness. This is called the Limited Public Service Loan Forgiveness Waiver. Under normal program rules, borrowers must be working at a qualified employer to receive forgiveness. We reached out to the Department of Education about the waiver, and they confirmed that requirement is temporarily waived. So we can verify the Limited Public Service Loan Forgiveness Waiver is available to qualified borrowers, even if they're not employed by a qualifying employer at the time of application and forgiveness. If you think you might qualify for this waiver, you'll need to act fast. It ends on October 31st.
Lincoln Park is what came closest to being the new location for the South Hill Dog Park. But today, the Parks Board decided Lincoln Park would not be the official site, and more work and surveys needed to be done to find an alternative. City park planners say finding an ideal location for the new South Hill Dog Park has been easier said than done.
This is an emotional topic for us. This is an emotional topic for the community. It is easy to plan master plans. It is easy to plan citywide and develop guidelines. It is hard to implement.
Despite all hardships, the department was able to finalize a location for the new proposed dog park.
Lincoln Park.
Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park. According to the department, nearly 70% of surveyed voters preferred Lincoln Park over Underhill Park and Hazel's Creek. But despite Lincoln Park being the most favored according to the department, Some people at Monday's meeting disagreed.
When you asked people in the community which site they preferred, did you tell them what was at stake? What would be irreversibly impacted? What our entire community would lose forever? What the true cost of this dog park would be?
Lincoln Park is an urban treasure. The upper part, it needs to be preserved.
I would add that you take note of what your mural is. We've brought nature into the City Council.
Only a handful of Monday's public commenters supported the resolution.
Is Lincoln Park the best solution? No, probably not. But we mustn't let perfect get in the way of good enough.
Thus far, the best alternative presented to us is Lincoln Park.
People said the survey process felt rushed, the proposed park area could be downsized, and there are other locations that would be a better fit. The department says its initial search included over 140 sites. The board had mixed opinions, but majority voted no. The Parks Department reports Spokane offers one dog park per 115,000 people, which is much lower than the average in the Pacific Northwest, one park per 26,000 people. Following this failed resolution, Spokane could be further away from closing that gap. Parks Board President Jennifer Ogden closed today's meeting by saying the search continues to find and build a South Hill dog park location. And while the Parks Department may be going back to the drawing board, the construction timeline at this point has not changed. Construction is still scheduled for early spring 2023.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Plowman, Special Collections Librarian at Gonzaga University.
Home, sweet home.
I work with the Bing Crosby collection, and one of the collections that we have is this wonderful Bing Crosby House Museum. People ask if this is where the house was moved, but this house has always been here since 1911.
I love the dear hearts and gentle people who live and love in my hometown.
The house was built in 1911 by Bing Crosby's dad and uncles to be the residential home for the large Crosby family. They had 4 boys and 2 girls that lived here. And so we've been fortunate enough here at Gonzaga to now own that house and put his memorabilia on display for the public.
There's a place I'd like to go, and it's back in Idaho.
So the most recent donation we have is this portrait done of Bing by the famous painter Norman Rockwell. He did this painting in 1947. What's interesting is the fact that Bing didn't actually sit down for this painting, but there is a photograph from the movie Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which Norman Rockwell used. That painting was then commissioned by the California Peach Association to promote their canned peaches.
It's a pleasure and a treat to meander down the street.
Bing has a lot of significance today because he was the quintessential entertainer. He did movies, which is at 104. He recorded more songs than anybody else. He did radio, and he got the recording idea of that you could record and not have to be live anymore. So he could not have to do all his radio shows live, but could actually do it, record my head time, and then go golf. And so Spokane never forgot him. You know, he brought Spokane to Hollywood by who he was and where he's from. He was always proud of the fact he was from Spokane.
Home, sweet
The KREM Cares Treats to Troops campaign needs you. Many of our Fairchild service members will be deployed this holiday season, and KREM 2 is leading the effort to make sure we send a little bit of the inland Northwest to our military men and women around the world.
Thank you, Treats to Troops, for sending love downrange. We really appreciate it. It makes a world of difference for us. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Papetti. KREM Cares Treats to Troops is happening right now, all this month. KREM 2 and our partners at Washington Trust Bank are collecting treats for Fairchild folks who won't be able to spend time with their families coming this holiday season. Right now through October 31st, you can go to any area Washington Trust Bank location and drop off a treat. Everything donated will be brought to Fairchild Air Force Base, where KREM 2 and volunteers with Fairchild Spouses Club will pack up the boxes. But to get those boxes full, we need those donations. So of course the question is, what to give? And we've made it so easy with the top 10 list, which is posted right now on KREM.com. You can donate anything from beef jerky to small bottles of hot sauce to powdered drink mixes, and lots of homemade cards and notes. KREM Cares Treats to Troops. If you want more information, just text the word treats to our text line, 509-448-2000. We'll send a link with all the info right to your phone.
Creating is what they do at Clay Connection. But connection is what's in the name.
So Clay Connection is a hub.
Mihaela Fedor has been teaching pottery,
Nice job.
connecting with students for years.
Push, 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 push.
And now she's using her skills to give back for Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
We unfortunately had a studio member who was killed by her husband as a result of domestic violence.
That studio member also had mobility problems, and Clay Connection is not fully ADA friendly. So owner Linnell Hinchy launched the Animal Bowl-a-thon fundraiser.
Most of these bowls were made from people in the studio here.
And on October 29th, Clay Connection will be selling the bowls from 3 to 7 at the Warrior Distillery. Half the proceeds will go towards ADA accessibility in the studio, but the other half they're donating to Spokane.
We like animals here, so it makes sense to support a local nonprofit that supports animals.
It was just kind of this perfect marriage of circumstances to kind of get to work with them.
Until the big day, Clay Connection is collecting handmade bowls from the community for the sale.
There we go.
Including bowls Mihaela's students have learned to make.
Where's Desmond Good Bird Peas? 7 years ago, we gave away our first Dave Henderson college scholarship, a $5,000 college scholarship. We kept raising more and more money. The auctions became more and more popular. And then we had 2 scholarship award winners, 4, 6, 8. Last year we 8. This year we have 10. David was an outstanding center fielder for the Mariners, the Boston Red Sox, the Oakland A's, won a World Series in Oakland. And then I had the pleasure of working with David for 14 years on radio and television. And he and I started a great little charity, which now has blossomed into a big charity called Toys for Kids, where we buy toys for homeless kids and underserved children, not only in King County, but throughout the state of Washington. We also do scholarships.
In my essay, I kind of explained a little bit about my backstory on how I moved up here from Montana and how I've persevered through a lot of situations in my life and how it's brought me here today on what I want to do with my future. I hope that I'm able to get into university, and I want to pursue nursing for my career.
Hi, my name is Nancy Henderson. I am Dave Henderson's wife. It's just the best feeling ever. Dave would have loved every minute of this, but he was always about getting back all the time, year round. So this was just a continuation of how he lived his life. My dad always had a smile on his face, and there was even, baseball coaches and baseball folks are like, what's wrong with him? He's smiling too much. He's not serious, he's having too much fun. But that is exactly what he was doing. He was having fun. It's a fun game, and we want to spread that smile and that cheer with as many people as we can.
It's been amazing having the support here at this school, having counselors, teachers, even the principal reaches out to me and asks me how I'm doing and what I need to do to be prepared for success. And having those resources was the #1 reason I was able to get this scholarship produced and get elected.
I'm Martha Dimitrovich and the owner of the Supper Club. I saw a picture of a TV dinner that someone else had made, and I just remembered that was kind of a warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feeling of getting to pick out that blue tray Swanson's TV dinner and going home and watching TGIF. I remember the food being horrible, but the memory and the experience being delicious. So I wanted to try and create something that triggered that memory in me, but was better for you, better tasting, and fun. We were really born out of a greater need of a couple of our friends, and we didn't really have enough finances to make everything work from month to month, and so we pooled resources and helped each other's grocery budgets out, and then worked together to make meals. We had extra, so then we were able to share with other people who also couldn't afford to contribute to the pot. The concept just grew from there and into this. When our family attended church, I was somewhat in charge of the tree of people who were activated at times when a meal was necessary. showing up when someone's at their lowest point and taking that one spinning plate away from them that they don't have to make sure that doesn't drop is everything sometimes. And when I've been in those similar situations, the things I valued the most were the friends or people who stepped in and just did something and didn't come and say, well, what can I do to help you? Food is the easiest way to love everyone no matter what, and everything else usually falls in line after dinner. If you're full, then you can think straight. So that's the goal.
So you may have heard of this story. We're at the 1,000 Steps right now, and legend has it that anyone that tries to get to the top of this staircase will be stopped by spirits. Now we happen to know what's at the top of the staircase, and you can find out what that is on our KREM 2 Plus special, Haunted Spokane. Check out the sneak peek we have of the 11 full stories.
It's almost as if the cemetery ripped itself apart to ward off unwanted guests.
I have walked the steps. I've made it from the bottom to the top.
It was so real. I stuck my head around the corner and there was nobody.
40 events, end quote, some of which were, quote, too horrible to even describe.
They broke rule number 1 of horror movies. They built on an old graveyard.
A newspaper reporter at the time said that those bodies will remain under that intersection until, quote, some careless spade disinters them in some future year, end quote.
I came in at 1 o'clock in the morning one night to get my equipment.
Was that normal what we just heard?
No, I don't know what that was.
It was a bad luck house before that, but then he really compiled on that, made that be a terrible place to live.
In 1892, Charles Brooks was the first man to be officially executed in Spokane County after killing his wife in what is now Riverfront Park. But according to a century-old newspaper article, he returned 3 months later to haunt the clerks in the courthouse auditor's office.
So if that didn't convince you that Spokane is haunted, you definitely have to check out the full special on KREM 2 Plus. If you're interested, you can text the word KREM 2 to 509-448-2000. We'll send you instructions on how to download KREM 2 Plus and binge all of the spooky, haunted Halloween content you can. In Spokane, Nicole Hernandez, KREM 2 News.
Thank you for joining us here on KREM 2 Plus for a look at some of the biggest news stories of the past week in Spokane and the rest of the Inland Northwest. For the most up-to-date news throughout the weekend, you can watch our very latest newscast right here on KREM 2 Plus. Just look for them in the bottom navigation menu. I'm Tim Pham. Thanks for watching.